Picture this. It's 1875, and a British archaeologist is digging through ancient Indian texts when he stumbles upon something that makes his hands shake. The description is so detailed, so precise, that it sounds like a modern aircraft manual. But these texts are thousands of years old. What he's reading about are called Vimanas, flying machines that could supposedly travel through the sky, underwater, and even between worlds. Now, here's where it gets really wild. These aren't just vague mentions of magical flying carpets or fairy tale nonsense. We're talking about technical specifications, blueprints, materials, operating instructions. It's like finding a Tesla manual buried in a Roman ruin. But wait, it gets weirder. Similar descriptions of flying vehicles show up in completely separate ancient cultures that never had contact with each other. The Egyptians had their flying boats of the gods. The Mayans described flying serpents that carried people across vast distances. Even the Bible mentions Ezekiel's wheel, a flying craft with incredible detail. So what's really going on here? Did ancient people actually have flying machines thousands of years before the Wright brothers? Are these just myths and legends that got mixed up over time? Or is there something much bigger happening that historians are afraid to admit? Today, we're diving deep into the mystery that has puzzled researchers for over 150 years. We'll explore the evidence, the theories, and the shocking discoveries that might change everything you think you know about human history. Let's start with the smoking gun, the ancient Sanskrit texts that first blew everyone's minds. The most famous is called the Vaimanika Shastra, which literally translates to the science of aeronautics. But here's the thing. This isn't some mystical, poetic description. It reads like an engineering manual. The text describes 32 different types of flying machines. It explains how they're powered, how they're steered, and even how to make them invisible to enemies. One type, called the Rukma Vimana, is described as being pyramid-shaped and capable of incredible speeds. Another, the Sundara Vimana, could apparently change its shape and appearance while flying. But it doesn't stop there. The texts describe materials that sound suspiciously like modern alloys. They talk about something called soma, a mysterious fuel that could power these machines for incredible distances. They even mention what sounds like radar systems and defensive weapons. Now, skeptics will tell you these texts were written much later than claimed, maybe even in the 20th century. But here's what they can't explain. Similar descriptions appear in the Ramayana and Mahabharata, epic poems that scholars agree are genuinely ancient. In the Ramayana, the demon king Ravana flies around in a magnificent Vimana called the Pushpaka. It's described as a flying palace that could carry thousands of people and move at the speed of thought. The Mahabharata is even more specific. It describes aerial battles between Vimanas, complete with what sound like guided missiles and defensive shields. One passage describes weapons that could destroy entire armies and create mushroom clouds, descriptions that eerily mirror nuclear weapons. But here's where it gets really interesting. These aren't the only ancient texts that mention flying machines. The Vedic literature, some of the oldest religious texts in the world, is full of references to flying vehicles used by the gods. The Rigveda mentions Indra's flying chariot that could move through the air and space. The Atharva Veda describes flying machines that could travel between earth and the heavens. What makes this even more compelling is the level of technical detail. These texts don't just say, "and then he flew away." They describe the mechanics, the fuel systems, the navigation methods. They talk about different types of metals, specific measurements, and operating procedures. It's like reading a pilot's manual from another era. And it's not just India. Ancient Chinese texts describe flying dragons that were clearly mechanical devices, not mythical creatures. They had detailed descriptions of their construction and operation. Ancient Tibetan texts mention flying vehicles called pearls in the sky that could carry people across vast distances. The question that haunts researchers is this: how did ancient people, supposedly living in primitive conditions, come up with such detailed technical descriptions of flying machines? Were they just incredibly creative storytellers, or were they describing something they had actually seen? What do you think? Are these ancient texts describing real flying machines, or are they just creative fiction? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's see what theories you come up with. Now let's move from ancient books to actual physical evidence, because this is where things get really mind-bending. Scattered across the globe, archaeologists have found artifacts that seem to show flying objects, but they're supposed to be from times when humans barely knew how to make fire. Let's start with the most famous one, the Saqqara bird from Egypt. This wooden artifact was found in an Egyptian tomb dating back over 2,000 years. At first glance, it looks like a simple bird carving. But when aeronautical engineers examined it closely, they discovered something shocking. Its proportions, wing design, and body shape match modern glider aircraft almost perfectly. Here's the kicker: when they built exact replicas and tested them, the models flew beautifully. They didn't just glide randomly. They showed sophisticated understanding of aerodynamics. The wings have the perfect angle, the body has the right weight distribution, and the tail design provides stability. This isn't something you stumble upon by accident. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. But it gets weirder. In Colombia, there are dozens of gold artifacts called the Quimbaya airplanes. These small gold objects look exactly like modern fighter jets, complete with triangular wings, vertical tail fins, and what appears to be cockpits. They're supposedly 1,500 years old, made by people who had never seen anything fly except birds. When aeronautical engineers made larger versions of these gold objects and fitted them with engines, they flew perfectly. They weren't just decorative items. They were scale models of functional aircraft. But how did ancient people in South America design perfect airplane models over 1,000 years before the Wright brothers? Moving to Asia, we find even stranger evidence. In Cambodia, the ancient temple of Angkor Wat has detailed stone carvings that show what look like flying vehicles. But these aren't birds or mythical creatures. They're clearly mechanical devices with wings, compartments for passengers, and what appear to be propulsion systems. In India, there are cave paintings that are thousands of years old showing people inside flying objects. The Tassalai cave paintings in the Sahara Desert show figures in what look like spacesuits next to flying disc-shaped objects. These paintings are at least 8,000 years old, from a time when humans supposedly lived in caves and hunted with stone tools. But perhaps the most puzzling evidence comes from Easter Island. You know, the place with the giant stone heads? Well, those heads have something strange about them. Many of them have what archaeologists call red stone hats. But when you look at them closely, they look suspiciously like helmets or headgear for pilots. Even more interesting, the oral traditions of Easter Island specifically mention flying machines. The islanders' legends talk about their ancestors arriving in flying vehicles and describe these machines in remarkable detail. They even have words in their ancient language that specifically refer to different parts of flying machines. Then there's the mystery of the Nazca lines in Peru. These massive drawings carved into the desert floor can only be properly seen from high in the air. They show animals, geometric patterns, and what look like landing strips. But here's the puzzle. Why would ancient people create artwork that could only be appreciated from a flying perspective if they had no way to fly? The traditional explanation is that these were made for the gods to see from heaven. But that seems like a pretty weak explanation when you consider the precision and scale of these drawings. They stretch for miles and are geometrically perfect. Creating them would have required aerial guidance and planning. Some of the most compelling evidence comes from ancient stone blocks. Around the world, we find massive stone structures that would be impossible to build without modern cranes and lifting equipment. The blocks at Puma Punku in Bolivia weigh up to 400 tons and are cut with laser-like precision. How did ancient people lift and move these massive stones? Ancient texts from these same regions describe flying machines being used in construction projects, lifting and moving massive stones through the air. Could this explain how these impossible monuments were actually built? The evidence keeps piling up, and it's getting harder to ignore. We have scale models of aircraft, detailed cave paintings of flying objects, massive construction projects that seem impossible without aerial assistance, and ancient artwork that only makes sense from an aerial perspective. So what's your take on this archaeological evidence? Are these just coincidences and misinterpretations? Or are we looking at proof that ancient humans had access to flying technology? Let me know in the comments what you think about these mysterious artifacts. Now here's where things get absolutely mind-blowing. In the last 50 years, scientists have made discoveries that are forcing us to completely rethink what ancient people were capable of. We're talking about evidence that's so advanced, it's making some researchers question everything they thought they knew about human history. Let's start with what happened in the 1990s when a team of German researchers decided to actually try building one of these ancient Vimanas. They took the specifications from the Sanskrit texts, not the vague descriptions, but the actual technical blueprints, and tried to construct a working model. What they found was shocking. The designs weren't just random ideas. They were based on solid engineering principles. The propulsion system described in the texts was eerily similar to modern ion drive technology. The materials specified in the ancient texts, when translated to modern equivalents, made perfect sense for aircraft construction. But here's the really crazy part. Some of the technologies described in these ancient texts are more advanced than what we have today. The texts describe something called solar energy absorption panels that sound exactly like modern solar panels, but with efficiency rates we still can't achieve. They mention materials that could change their molecular structure on command, something we're just starting to develop with smart materials. Then there's the Mercury engine mystery. Multiple ancient texts describe Vimanas powered by mercury vortex engines. For decades, scientists dismissed this as nonsense because mercury is toxic and doesn't seem useful for propulsion. But in 2004, something incredible happened. A team of researchers discovered that when mercury is spun at extremely high speeds in a magnetic field, it creates anti-gravitational effects. Suddenly, these ancient descriptions of mercury-powered flying machines didn't sound so crazy anymore. In fact, several modern aerospace companies are now secretly researching mercury-based propulsion systems. But wait, it gets even weirder. In 2019, the Pentagon officially released videos of UFOs, they call them UAPs now, that move in ways that seem to defy our understanding of physics. These objects accelerate instantly, make impossible turns, and travel at incredible speeds without creating sonic booms. Here's the shocking part. The movement patterns of these modern UFOs match exactly the flight characteristics described for ancient Vimanas in Sanskrit texts. The ancient texts describe vehicles that could move instantly in any direction, hover silently, and accelerate to incredible speeds without harming the occupants inside. Modern physicists are studying these Pentagon videos and they're baffled. The technology required to move like this is beyond anything we currently understand. Yet these exact same movement patterns were described in detail thousands of years ago in ancient Indian texts. Then there's the recent discovery in Romania that has everyone talking. In 2009, archaeologists found what they initially thought was a fossilized bird. But when they examined it more closely, they realized it was made of an unknown metal alloy that shouldn't exist in nature. The object is clearly artificial, but it's 20,000 years old. Even more puzzling, the metal composition includes elements that we've only recently learned how to create in laboratories. How did someone 20,000 years ago create an advanced metal alloy that we're just figuring out how to make today? Similar discoveries are happening all over the world. In Russia, they found metal objects embedded in coal deposits that are millions of years old. These objects show clear signs of being manufactured, but they contain materials and design elements that are beyond our current technology. In South America, researchers have discovered what appear to be ancient landing strips carved into mountaintops. These strips are perfectly straight, thousands of feet long, and would be ideal for aircraft landings. But they're located in places that would be impossible to reach without flying vehicles. The most recent bombshell came in 2023 when researchers using ground-penetrating radar discovered massive underground chambers beneath ancient temple sites in India. These chambers match exactly the descriptions of Vimana hangars mentioned in ancient texts. The chambers are enormous, with entrance ramps that slope upward toward the surface. Exactly what you'd expect for underground aircraft storage. But perhaps the most compelling modern evidence is coming from materials science. Researchers have been analyzing metal fragments found at ancient sites, and they're discovering alloys that shouldn't be possible with ancient technology. These metals show signs of having been processed at temperatures exceeding 6,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than any ancient furnace could achieve. Even more mysteriously, some of these metal samples contain isotopic ratios that don't match anything found naturally on Earth. Where did these materials come from, and how did ancient people acquire and work with them? The evidence is piling up so fast that mainstream academia is struggling to keep up. We have ancient texts with accurate technical specifications, archaeological artifacts that demonstrate advanced engineering knowledge, and modern discoveries that suggest our ancestors had access to technology we're only beginning to understand. What's your opinion on these modern discoveries? Do you think we're on the verge of rewriting human history, or is there another explanation for all this evidence? Share your thoughts in the comments and let's discuss what this could all mean. Alright, we've looked at the evidence, and now it's time to dive into the theories that attempt to explain this massive mystery. Fair warning, some of these ideas are going to blow your mind, and others might make you question everything you thought you knew about human civilization. Theory number 1 is the lost civilization theory, and it's gaining serious traction among researchers. This theory suggests that there was an advanced human civilization that existed thousands of years ago, far more advanced than we ever imagined. This civilization had flying machines, advanced materials, and sophisticated technology, but something catastrophic happened that wiped them out. Think about it. We know that massive global catastrophes have happened before. The Younger Dryas period, about 12,000 years ago, saw dramatic climate changes that wiped out entire species. What if a technologically advanced civilization existed before this catastrophe and was mostly destroyed, leaving only scattered remnants and oral traditions that became our ancient myths? This would explain why similar stories of flying machines appear in cultures all around the world that never had contact with each other. These weren't separate inventions of the imagination. They were shared memories of real technology that once existed. The evidence supporting this theory is pretty compelling. We keep finding advanced artifacts buried under layers of earth that are supposed to be from primitive times. We have sophisticated astronomical knowledge encoded in ancient monuments that primitive people shouldn't have possessed. And we have engineering achievements that seem impossible without modern technology. Theory number 2 is even more mind-bending: the ancient astronaut theory. This suggests that extraterrestrial visitors came to Earth in ancient times and either gave humans advanced technology or were mistaken for gods with their flying vehicles. Now, before you roll your eyes, consider this. Ancient texts from around the world describe beings who came from the sky in flying vehicles, possessed incredible technology, and taught humans various skills. These beings are often described as looking different from humans. Taller, with different skin colors, and sometimes with unusual features. The Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki, beings who came from the sky and taught humans about agriculture, mathematics, and technology. The Hindu texts describe the Devas, divine beings with flying vehicles who interacted with humans. Even the Bible describes angels who appeared in fiery chariots and possessed technology that seemed magical to ancient people. What's interesting is that these ancient gods are often described as having flying vehicles with very specific technical details. They're not just vague, divine chariots. They have descriptions of propulsion systems, landing procedures, and operational characteristics that sound remarkably like modern aircraft. Theory number 3 is the Atlantis connection. This theory suggests that the legendary lost continent of Atlantis was real and was home to an advanced civilization with flying technology. When Atlantis was destroyed, survivors scattered across the globe, taking their knowledge with them and establishing the various ancient civilizations we know about. This would explain why we see similar advanced knowledge appearing simultaneously in different parts of the world: Egypt, India, South America, and other ancient civilizations. These weren't independent developments. They were colonies or settlements established by Atlantean survivors who brought their technology with them. Plato's description of Atlantis mentions that they had flying vehicles and advanced warfare technology. He describes their civilization as being far more advanced than anything that existed in his time. If Atlantis was real and possessed this technology, it would explain the global distribution of similar knowledge and artifacts. Theory number 4 is the interdimensional theory, and this one gets really wild. Some researchers suggest that ancient Vimanas weren't just flying through our physical space, but were actually traveling between dimensions or parallel realities. This would explain some of the seemingly impossible flight characteristics described in ancient texts. The Sanskrit texts describe Vimanas that could become invisible, travel instantly across vast distances, and move in ways that defied physical laws. What if these weren't just advanced aircraft, but vehicles capable of manipulating space-time itself? Modern quantum physics is discovering that reality is far stranger than we ever imagined. We're learning about parallel dimensions, quantum entanglement, and the possibility of manipulating space and time. What if ancient people had access to this knowledge long before we rediscovered it? Theory 5 is the genetic memory theory. This suggests that humans have a form of genetic memory that preserves information from our distant past. The detailed descriptions of flying machines in ancient texts might not be fiction or historical records, but rather genetic memories of real experiences from our ancestors. Scientists have discovered that traumatic or significant experiences can actually alter DNA and be passed down to future generations. What if our ancestors' experiences with advanced flying technology were so significant that they became embedded in our genetic memory, surfacing as myths and legends in cultures around the world? But here's the theory that's gaining the most attention among serious researchers: the cyclical civilization theory. This suggests that human civilization goes through cycles of advancement and destruction. We advance to high levels of technology, then something catastrophic happens that sends us back to primitive conditions, and we have to start over. According to this theory, we're not the first technologically advanced civilization on Earth. Previous cycles of human development achieved flying machines, advanced materials, and sophisticated engineering, but global catastrophes reset civilization multiple times throughout history. This would explain why we keep finding evidence of advanced technology in ancient times, why ancient people seem to know things they shouldn't have known, and why similar technologies appear in different cultures around the world. The really scary part of this theory is that it suggests we might be heading for another reset. Climate change, nuclear weapons, social collapse. Maybe we're approaching the end of our current cycle, just like those advanced civilizations before us. So which theory makes the most sense to you? Are we looking at evidence of a lost human civilization, ancient alien visitors, interdimensional travelers, or something else entirely? The evidence is there, but the explanation remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. What's your take on these theories? Do any of them resonate with you, or do you have a completely different explanation for the Vimana mystery? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think is really going on here. So here we are, after diving deep into one of the most fascinating mysteries in human history. We've looked at ancient texts that read like technical manuals, archaeological evidence that defies explanation, modern discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew, and theories that could completely rewrite our understanding of human civilization. The question that started this whole journey was simple. Did ancient people really have flying machines? But as we've seen, the answer is anything but simple. The evidence is there. Detailed technical specifications in ancient texts, sophisticated artifacts that demonstrate advanced engineering knowledge, and modern discoveries that suggest our ancestors knew things they shouldn't have known. Whether you believe in lost civilizations, ancient astronauts, interdimensional travelers, or cyclical human development, one thing is clear. There's something about our past that we're not understanding correctly. The official story of gradual human development from primitive cave dwellers to modern technological civilization might be missing some pretty major chapters. Maybe we're not the first advanced civilization on this planet. Maybe our ancestors weren't as primitive as we've been taught. Maybe there are technologies and knowledge systems that have been lost and rediscovered multiple times throughout human history. What's really exciting is that we're living in a time when new evidence is being discovered constantly. Ground-penetrating radar is revealing hidden chambers beneath ancient sites. Advanced materials analysis is showing us that ancient people worked with metals and alloys we thought were modern inventions. And space agencies around the world are finally admitting that there are objects in our skies that move in ways our current physics can't explain. The mystery of the Vimanas isn't going away. If anything, it's getting more compelling with each new discovery. We're standing on the edge of potentially rewriting human history, and that's both thrilling and a little bit scary. If you found this journey as fascinating as I did, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep exploring these mysteries together. There are so many more ancient enigmas out there waiting to be investigated. From impossible ancient constructions to mysterious artifacts that challenge everything we think we know about our past. And speaking of mysteries, what would you like to see us explore next? Ancient giants? Lost civilizations under the ocean? Technologies that disappeared from history? Let me know in the comments what mysteries keep you up at night, and we'll dive into them together. Don't forget to hit that like button if this video opened your mind to new possibilities, and share it with anyone who loves a good mystery. Because the truth is out there, and it might be stranger than any of us ever imagined. The mystery of the Vimanas is far from solved, but that's what makes it so fascinating. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and never stop wondering what secrets our past might be hiding. Until next time, keep looking up. You never know what you might see flying around up there.